Hey everyone, welcome back to the Sports Psych Show. Thanks so much for joining me. Today I'm joined by soccer coach Dave Webb. Dave, welcome.
Hi Dan, thanks for having me on.
Good to see you.
And you.
We have history.
We do.
We've worked together quite a bit. So
Yep.
really excited to have you here and unpacking everything sports psychology and coaching and leadership and coaching and well, who knows where we're going to go. But we've had the pleasure of working together quite often, and I know a lot about your work, and I've always really enjoyed working with you. We've spoken sports psychology a lot whenever we get together, and we're going to do that today. So, Dave, tell me about yourself. Tell me about your work.
Yeah, it's been an interesting one, Dan. So not a straightforward coaching career. It's started back in 2002, free at Crystal Palace Academy. Got some interesting young players through from the recruitment side as well. Young players which have gone on to have fantastic careers, which was good. Then moved on to Tottenham, sort of 2005. Same sort of role, but coaching and recruitment, still in that academy sort of framework. Then got my first full-time role in football at Millwall in 2007 after Tottenham. That was in a sort of youth development kind of role. Again, coaching was the main sort of bulk of my work, but there was good emphasis on recruitment as well for younger players to be recruited into Millwall Academy. While I was there, I think where we crossed paths was I started to undertake a master's at Brunel.
That's right. Sports psychology masters.
And then sports psychology,
Yep.
sports psychology. And then then I moved on to sort of St Mary's. So I did some at Brunel and some at St Mary's because it was more of a practical based at St Mary's,
Gotcha.
which probably suited me better, not coming from a natural academia background. Sort of 2008, 2009, I did a site visit to Bayer Leverkusen, which was really interesting as part of an academy director's course. And from that 3-day sort of study visit, I got a good relationship with them and started to do a little bit of consulting work on the recruitment perspective, which I could do that alongside my role at Millwall because there was no conflict of interest. Obviously, two completely different club sizes, and stuff. So that was a really interesting experience for me. And then after Millwall, 2010-11, unfortunately, the club went for a period where they lost their academy status, got reduced to centre of excellence, and I found myself needing another role. So I sort of moved from coaching into recruitment at that time to Southampton. Southampton was in the Championship. I worked there for about 2 years. First role was 16 to 21s to recruit players into their academy and ready for the first team, then more into the first team environment. And that led me to my next role working with Eddie Howe at Bournemouth, who was 2013 was a manager at the time, with most of his staff that are with him now at Newcastle, and a head of recruitment to bring in players for Bournemouth to help us get competitive and challenge to see if we go out for the Premier League, which we did within a 2-year time frame, which was fantastic. From there, I got offered to go to Tottenham Hotspur to work with Paul Mitchell and Maurizio Pochettino, who I worked with previously at Southampton. So that's kind of how that relationship formed from there. And the role was 17s to 21s elite recruitment, also with some development in there as well to work with some coaches, but also a lot overlapped on the sort of first team. So it was that kind of role. Paul Mitchell got moved to sort of sporting director, and I got moved further up the ladder on the recruitment spectrum. And that I was there for about two and a half seasons. We had a really good, successful period during that time as well. Then led to Östersund.
Yep.
As a sporting director.
Östersund's team in Sweden.
Yes, Östersund. Yeah, they just had a period, I think, through that time with Graham Potter. So they was in a bit of a limelight especially a name that had sort of come into Europe a little bit. Graham had done great work. A young coach called Ian Birchnell took over, and we had some contact, and yeah, it led to me taking to a sporting director role, and that's where we got to work with each other again for a period of time. Dan,
Yep.
after that, I was only there a year because Huddersfield Town was at that time was in the Championship. They just got relegated from the Premier League. They actually bought me out of my contract
Hmm.
to start a role with them in a very similar capacity as a technical director. So Ossersons was quite short lived, um, but really good period. Huddersfield was a different challenge, coming down from the Premier League. Lots and lots of challenges. Lots of appointing a new manager within the first 2-3 weeks was something I'd never done,
Okay.
which was quite a challenge to go through that sort of process. And then lead more of a comprehensive overview of different departments, so bigger departments than probably what I've done before. So more sports science, more medical recruitment, having a relationship with more the head coaches, managing up on the board, working with the owners. Yeah, it was a very big role. That lasted about 18 months to 2 years, sort of during the COVID period as well. But to tell you the truth, I was always itching to get back on the grass. That was my love. So I had a short break after Huddersfield, which I think was needed because I went from job to job to job. So a short period of just a bit of reflection time, 6 months off, and thought, right, I need to refocus back on my coaching. I got fortunate enough to offer a head coach's role at York City, which was the National League at the time,
Hmm.
which was a really good challenge. A really, really good challenge because I'd never worked at National League before. So lots of different challenges with that type of role, managing players that were obviously very different levels to the one that I've worked to before. So you had to find very different ways to work with them, develop them, manage them, coach them, which was a real fascinating challenge. And that was a really, really good period, really good learning period. And then after York, I got offered a very, very interesting role, a little bit of a left field one, with the Georgia national team as an assistant coach to Willie Sagnol, who is quite a good name in the world of football. And yeah, Georgia at that time was going through a period of growth, period of change. And another big attraction was that we had after the Nations League games, which was my first 6 games with Georgia, we had a chance to play in the playoffs to get to the Euros, which we did, which was a phenomenal experience to be a part of. And that leads me to where I am. I'm still there now.
What a journey!
It is, yeah.
What a journey! I mean, there's so many directions we can take this conversation around coaching, around leadership, being
Mm.
a sporting or technical director, overseeing a club, overseeing the relationship between departments. Would you say that your master's degree in sports psychology has had an influence in each of those roles?
Yeah, for sure, definitely. And I was always fascinated with the world of psychology from a very young age,
Okay.
and football was my chosen sport.
Yep.
That was my passion. That was my love. And I sort of realised when I was doing my coaching badges, my A license back in 2007-8, that I needed something else in my career in football. I needed something that I was passionate about. I looked at sports science and stuff. I looked at those sort of areas, which I thought was a bit too broad at the time for me. I wanted to really focus on sort of a isolated subject in sports psych, um, because I knew it would have many layers and really give me that sort of foundation and that education um, that I felt I needed at the time if I have the levels that I wanted to achieve in my career. I thought having that behind me would really help, and it has in each of my roles, whether it be in a head of recruitment, whether it be in a head coach, a sporting director. It's played a key role, and really helped me in all of those, because in all of those roles, it's they've had loads of different challenges. So having that understanding, I think, of the human element, has really helped. The leadership side of how to sort of manage departments. Um, yeah, it's in each of them. They've all helped in their own way.
So let's dive in with the recruitment, because I think this is a fascinating area of psychology, the psychology of recruitment,
Mm.
recruiting a player based on psychology. We'll come around to the coaching, we'll come around to the leading an organisation, a sporting organisation. Let's start with recruitment. Um, how has psychology helped you become a better recruiter? And when you think of recruiting players from a psychological perspective, what are you looking out for? What are you considering?
Yeah, really good question. I suppose for me, I was really interested in the characteristic side, because as a recruiter in elite football, I think the competencies you need are also, you have to be able to judge the players' technical and tactical and physical elements to a degree. You have to have that as a given. That's your job. The character side has always been the hardest to um, to pin down, and I've used it in different capacities in different roles. So, for example, when just looking at potential top young players that might have maybe 16, 17 that you was going to look to purchase from other clubs and otherwise pay a fee, that would I would look at sort of certain characteristics of. But one thing I had this rule. I think, well, first of all, look at the once I've got all the football elements right, what environment are they coming from? So what's the club, the environment they're coming from, and what they're coming into. So that's what I try to sort of as my starting point, if you like. Well, that's my starting point. So I know they can play. I know the elements. I know everything about the football side, positions. I know all of that. But this could be the key. So it's like buying a house. So you want to know the foundations. You want to know what's underneath. You want to know what's the core characteristics of this player. So that's what I tried to do first of all, is to do a little bit of research of where they're coming from, obviously, and have a real deep understanding of the club I was working for, to know those environments. Um, and then there was sort of I'd go for a checklist. So maybe say 5 characteristics, traits that you would probably try to look for in a younger player at that age. Obviously, 5 would be very, very hard, especially at that age, to have as an individual. So I'll try to look at maybe 2 or 3 with some others that could potentially be developed. That would be my sort of go to. So characteristics would be, I'd expect them to maybe have, obviously, are they sort of team ethic based
Mm-hmm.
when they play? Do they work really hard um, on the ball?
Mm-hmm.
Do they work? Do they communicate? Do they have good body language? Do they have good eye contact? These were the stuff I'd look for on field that I could visually see.
Yeah.
So yeah, these are the things that I could visually see. Then I'd go to more in, because it was going to approach it more of a research of, um, if they had any sort of social media or stuff that I could look at to see what type of maybe sort of personality they were, even as a young age. I think it was still key.
Mm-hmm.
That would also give me some indications if there was anything I could find out information based. And some of the things I'd be looking for would be, um, still the team element based person. Could they come into this environment and fit into us, and have the potential to fit into us?
Yeah.
Then I would look at what they needed to do that, potentially, because again, we're looking to buy. So if it was maybe someone from abroad, look at the language, look at the home life, look at the parent, look at the support. and then look at what we could do to bring them in to help them support that as well, because they're coming from maybe overseas, where different country, different challenges. They're going to have all these things, so the support was key, and could they adapt to that? So it was trying to get those elements in place as well. And also, when they say about young leadership qualities, it was a very hard one, like to think through, because you look at young, especially young players of today's society. You know, what is a leadership quality in a young player? What do they have? So my thing was probably, confidence, a little bit of confidence, um, maybe how they spoke, maybe how they communicated, all the things that they could take into a dressing room, into a team, into an environment, that skills that I think that could have helped them. So these were some of the things that I'd looked at, from potential young players coming in, because again I still had to justify those elements if we was going to pay a fee, depending what that fee was. The more work would significantly go into it as well. And I think, and I wanted to present to owners and my direct bosses at the time, that we're trying to get a comprehensive player. These are all the football elements. These are the stats that we found that resonate with us. We can find those. Those are easy. They're factual. This is what it is. I think the other side is so hard to, because you can't present it in a factual way, can you? You can't. It's not factual. Psychology isn't factual. It changes. It fluctuates. It changes. So it was trying to get, well, these are maybe some of his core components, and there's some really good stuff for us to work with. And I think in our environment that he could potentially go on. It was trying to sort of get those elements.
I'm interested. I mean, as you've mentioned there, psychology is contextual and it's nuanced and it's complex and it can vary from environment to environment. Very interesting that you're being a detective of the environment that the player is coming from and considering the environment that you're going to bring them into. Are they suitable? Can we? I've always thought, and maybe I can get a comment from you on this, I've always thought that such a big part of recruitment is actually the interface between the recruiter and your club, in as much as
Mm.
understanding from your coaches, your people at the organisation, can we accommodate this player? What if it goes wrong? On that, I'm really interested here. You've worked for some, from a recruitment perspective, for some stellar coaches. Mauricio Pochettino at Spurs at the time had incredible success there, took them to a Champions League final, is now head coach of the US national team. Lots of US coaches listening in. You worked with Eddie Howe as head of recruitment at Bournemouth. What kind of, I'm interested in the conversations you had there. I'm interested in the questions that they asked and the pushback they had. Was psychology a big part of their questioning, or were they more oriented towards the tactical, physical side of things? What kind of conversations would you have had? Obviously, you can't go into anything that's confidential, but what kind of questions may they have
Yeah,
asked you, and pushbacks may they have given to you?
yeah. I think, let me start with Ed, because obviously you know
Yeah,
Ed a little bit as well from
yeah,
your time at Bournemouth. So Ed was very big on psychology and leadership, very, very big. At the time, he was, in 2013, he was fascinated with John Wooden's leadership and
yeah. The
stuff like
pyramid,
this, and
pyramid was a big one
characteristics.
for him.
The
Yeah,
pyramids, yeah, yeah, it was massive for him. So he, he said, I remember he said to me, he said, "Look, I know you can spot players. I know you can spot talent, and I know you've done it. I know you can do that. But I also want humans. I want people. I want people that can come into the dressing room and add to it." That was one of his big things. He was very cautious. He was very non-risk averse at the time, so he wanted to find out as much information about the the person, the background. And at first team level, you can do that a little bit more, because you can speak to coaches that have worked with him. You can speak to maybe players that have played with him. You can maybe speak to to some close people to him to just get a general base. And he would want that information in detail. To give you an example, that would be something that he would want. So yes, he'd be, the football side, like I said, is the competency side. He said that was a given. You're head of recruitment, so I know you can recruit. What am I buying? What am I buying? What's coming in the building? What's he going to add? And that's what it had to be kind of an in-depth profile on the background of the players. So, for example, like Callum Wilson and Dan Gosling, the players that recruited into, we had to do a lot of work around them to bring them in, because we knew that was the first question Ed would ask. He would be, right, okay, that's great. I like him as a player. Got it. He suits the way we play. Got it. You understand that. Tell me about him. Tell me about him. What's he gonna bring to the dressing room? Is he gonna mess up the dressing room? Is he gonna be a bit of a wally? Is he gonna be what's his lifestyle like outside? Is he gonna be going out? Bournemouth's quite a nice area to go out. Is he gonna be tempted to go out a lot? Is he gonna be has he got a family? Has he got kids? What's he like? Do you know if he's a good parent? Do you know if he's a good person? That's the sort of levels and details we had to sort of cover. Because the dressing room to him, he said, "Look, the dressing room to me is sacred. What we do on the pitch, on the training field," he said, brings a team together. When they're in the dressing room, that's when it really counts. I want good people in there. Don't want obviously nice people in there. I want good people in there. That was his thing. Not I don't want too nice. I don't want to being too much of a hothead. I want a good character that will work for the team, put the team first. I've got those values in him, and do everything to achieve our goals together as a collective. That was his thing. Find me them.
And Pochettino, anything different from him or very similar?
Very similar characteristics were very similar in terms of he wanted good people. So again, a lot of work had to go into the background. Probably not as intense,
Okay.
maybe as Ed, where Tottenham were a bigger club at the time than Bournemouth, so bigger aspirations in terms of during the period I was there, as you mentioned, got to a Champions League final, come second in the Premier League in their first season to Leicester. Got very, very close with not having the biggest budget in terms of recruitment. So Man United, Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal, City, even teams like Newcastle were probably ahead of us. We were probably mid on that sort of thing. So our challenge was to find really niche players that fitted his style of play. It was the first and foremost. He wanted players that could fit his style of play, but also really good people in the dressing room. And because we was recruiting players more from abroad, so we had to find out. Obviously, getting information sometimes was a lot harder than maybe players where our focus at Bournemouth, because was predominantly UK based with some abroad, where here it was a global market at Tottenham. So the information we had to find out was obviously the language, the history. Again, as much information as we could. But he wanted players that were 9 out of 10 in training.
Okay, good trainers.
He wanted players that were good trainers, really, really good trainers that would be really intense and focused in training. That's what he wanted, because he felt that training was fundamental to everything leading into a game. That was his remit of what he wanted. So they had to be really, really good trainers.
Surely surely one of the most important characteristics that you're looking for is self-regulation, self-control, evidence that these players can engage in a sense of self-control, self-regulation. It strikes me that evidence from the past of overcoming difficulties, challenges, roadblocks, speed bumps, those are the kind of things you're, just to close out our conversation here around recruitment and psychology of recruitment before we move on to coaching. When I think of concepts and constructs within sports psychology, self-regulation, self-control, so critical, surely evidence of.
Yes, no, I agree. And I think now, when we go into more coaching, it's becoming more. Maybe I didn't see it as much on the recruitment side, um, but I think now being back in the coaching arena, it's definitely, I see it more, and I fully agree that self-control, self-regulation, the ability to manage pressure, the ability to respond, to have those different psychological traits in key moments of the games, the calmness, the pressure, the intensity, and like you say, being able to self-regulate those depending on the situations is, I think, is key. And when we go into the coaching piece, obviously I can allude a little bit more, especially with the Georgia national team.
Yeah. Well, tell me about. Let's go back to our lens of this through your sports psychology masters. Your interest in sports psychology. You know, your coaching career. You've coached at all levels now, right up to national team level. You've been a head coach at York City. You've coached young and older players at some incredible clubs. Talk to me about what sports psychology brings to your coaching, because this could be so broad and so deep and such
Yes,
a
yeah.
long conversation. But let's break this down. You know, what's important to you? What are you thinking about from a sports psychology aspect when you are coaching?
Yeah, I think now, for me, I'm looking to try to get the best out of the team. For me, from the coaching perspective, I want to develop them as humans. That's what I want to do, because
Okay.
that's for me. Um, develop them as people, develop them as humans, because I think the more I know about them, the more I can work with them, the more I can understand them, the more I can know how to work with them, because every individual within the team is different. Every individual has got different needs and different trigger points to how they respond. And a little bit more deeper than the arm around or shouting, or, really get to know the person, because especially now in the new day and age where social media plays a big part, that there's lots of distractions, there's lots more exposure to these players than probably was a few years ago. So with that brings its own pressures. So for me, it's about managing those pressures individually and as a team, and the expectations of those, because to a little bit of example, the Georgia national team found it really hard playing at home
Mm.
in front of our own fans. And just before our playoff game in March 2024, Willie said to me, he said, "Look, with your background, can you do a presentation on staying calm and playing under pressure before the two crucial playoff games we had against Luxembourg and Greece?" And the reason why both these games were at home, and Georgia's got a massive fan base when we play at home, is over 50,000. And because of the nature of the country and the expectations, and I don't, and it's a dictatorship country, when the players come back, they feel an automatic, I don't know, like a loyalty, a deep love, that they feel they're so ingrained, they want to perform. And sometimes that can overshadow the performance. because they can lose their self within that. So he said, look, let's see if that can help. Let's see if we can do that before these 2 games. So I did. We had a long chat with the coaching team of what that presentation might look like, because it's the first time it'd ever been done. So I said, what are we looking for? What are the messages we want to give the players? What's the key messages? We don't want to over bombard them. We don't want to under bombard them. We just want to make a dent so they can have some key takeaway messages that they can have when they go on to the training week, because we did it sort of second, third day of training, so there was still a lot more training days to have. So we wanted to impact a little, to not just do it for the matches, but to try and get it embedded a little bit through the training week, and maybe use some of those messages in training as well, rather than just say you need this for your match. We want them to start to switch on a little bit earlier.
Can you take us through that presentation?
Yeah. So the first bit was I did. We used some context from players from different sports and some people that had gone through sort of adversity and talking about their own pressure moments, just to give some context of how they were and handled big moments. And it was about 5 minutes. So from basketball, from American football, from rugby, from golf, and it was all put together. There's a couple of there was a bit from Steve Jobs as well in there,
Yep.
just to throw it all together. And they was all talking about staying calm under pressure, controlling your emotions, and how they did it in the big moments. So that's how we started it off, just to give that sort of audio bit. Then I went into a slide and I sort of talk about 3 key points. So first of it was playing under pressure. Then I sort of opened that question up to the group and say, what do you think pressure means to you, and staying calm, rather than, and I didn't get many answers back because they're quite a quiet group.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to see was probably the ones that, apart from the captain, who's quite vocal, is which of the other ones are going to speak. So our main player, Quara, who plays at PSG, he spoke a little bit because he was playing at Napoli at the time, so he was used to playing in a cauldron in Syria.
May I ask what his answer was? Do you remember?
Yeah, he just says, for me, he just says he kept it quite simple. He just for me, he says I relax before the games. He says I'm going to stay calm. He said I don't. I just think about this as another game. I don't see it as we could get to the Euros. I just see it as another game.
Okay.
And I thought that was really interesting how he saw it.
Yep.
Because he is he's quite a calm character. Even though he's our biggest player and he's a superstar now in the global sense of things, but
Yes.
he's it was interesting his answer. The captain spoke a little bit about focusing on the game itself and blocking out the noise, and doing the things we do in training, sticking to the game plan. Don't get overexcited, because sometimes we found our players respond to the crowd, because the crowd's very different to England. It's not so much, they're not on your backs straight away. They're very much, if someone does a dribble or a run or something like that, they get excited. So
Gotcha.
some players, more of our attacking players, will get excited by that. So yeah, he was talking about staying focused, stay within the team framework. We've got a game plan. Let's stick to what we've got to do. Let's stick to the job at hand. So he spoke a little bit about that. And then a younger player spoke, and he just says, he just completely sort of, not threw me a little bit. He just said, I get really nervous. He said, like, when I get in, I want to dribble. I want to do something. How do I not do that? And we was like, oh wow, that's really interesting, because sometimes I want, this is what you want from the players, how they're feeling about these situations. And we just try to give it context and say, look, you can do those at the right moments because that's who you are. but just to give some context, maybe we can do more in these areas, the attacking areas of the pitch, so you don't leave the team exposed. So just we want you to be who you are because that's what you're good at. You can create something for us higher up the pitch, but when you're here, try and manage those and do what's best for the team and just try and focus on this area.
Can I interject and just
Of
say,
course, yeah.
I think that there's two interesting aspects to that experience there with that young player. Number one, that young player feeling like he can speak up and express his experience or share his experience, that moment of vulnerability, which, as you say, throws you a little bit because, and I think this is quite typical in high performance sport around the world, in all sports, team sports, where in team sports where you know that the team is going to be picked, it's out of your control, and you're concerned that if you express any kind of vulnerability, that might influence being in the team and not being in the team. So,
Yeah.
so one could suggest that's a moment of bravery in this context. And then what I also love about the response to him is it's in essence a tech tack or just a tactical solution to a psychological challenge, which I just think is so important. I always say this about all sports. Sports are games of action, technical, tactical, physical action. That really is a blanket statement across all sports, which I think is a truism. But
Yeah.
the capacity to execute those actions, those technical, tactical, physical actions optimally is heavily mediated by the mental side of the game. But there's a relationship between mindset and technical, tactical, physical. And you can improve mindset and find mental solutions through technical, tactical, physical explorations. I think that's really interesting that was the intervention pathway that you went down.
Yeah. Because I think sometimes as well, because I wasn't a natural academic. So when I was studying this, some of the academia aspects I found quite challenging, but now, because it took me a long time to complete the masters, but I find having some of those frameworks that I could revert back to was good in that type of context, because it could have give a very blanket answer, a very different answer that maybe would have took that young player down a different path. Because I think some coaches could have gone, well, just don't dribble, just don't do
Yeah.
that, just don't do it in the game because you're going to cost us. But I wanted to think, well, give him that, because he did speak up, as you alluded to. He was vulnerable, and he wasn't one I expected to speak up. It was just I wanted to give him, so okay, right, still give him his freedom, because that's who he is. That's who, you can't take that from him. That's why he plays for the national team, because of these qualities. He's these technical and tactical attributes, and he's physically very good as well. So you can't take that away from him. Can't tell him not to do it. But it's just, okay, right, we can give you a framework. Maybe do it in this area, so you still get that bit where you get that bit maybe from the crowd, as well, because I think some players need that. But realizing your duty to the team is when we are defensively here, this is your role as well, and we need you to do this to the best of your ability, which we know you can do. That was kind of giving him just a little bit of both, So yes, responsible for the team, but also when you're here, that's less risk for us. Let's see what you can do and try and create something.
So reflecting back on this presentation, I don't know if there's a third part that you want to share, but number one, you're creating the context. You're providing quotes from famous sports competitors, famous people, and showing the players that they too experience these nerves. You're showing them how they deal with these nerves through quotes, through stories, possibly through videos, and then you ask the players to share their experience. You had some vulnerability in the group, but you also had some authority within the group in terms of how more experienced players, the captain, deals with and dealt with pressure. A keen mix. Was there a third element, or did that really wrap up what you did?
Yeah, I suppose the third element was we wanted to show them a video of them
Yeah,
and their
yeah,
journey of getting there, just to finish. So because the middle bit was quite intense, I think there were some good key messages for the players to take away. Not many, maybe two or three, which was enough. We thought, especially given the tactical things they had to sort of take on board as well, the tactical elements. So we just wanted to leave them with something that this is what you've achieved to get here, and showed them a reel over the last year of their best moments with some powerful music. And we made it all about them. And then we did some elements of them in the dressing room, them in training, and just to show the togetherness as well. Just to finish on that, I think. And actually, then after that, these presentations became a bit of a theme. Not at every camp, but the coach would ask, like even before the Euros, that was a different presentation that was needed because Georgia was the lowest ranked team within the Euros. Some very big teams: England, France, Spain, Germany. Very, very different levels to us. So I used something that Willie said, like one of our head coach, Willie saying, he said, look, because he played in Germany, we're not coming here to be tourists. We're not just here to make up some numbers. We want to come here and compete and give our best. So we wanted to forge a real togetherness. So we called ourselves the Hunters. We wanted to be like real hunters. So we could use that in the way we played on our tactical side of pressing and how we pressed and hunted teams down and not giving them space and time on the ball. That was our main theme, and then explode in attack with our speed going forward as well, and our creativity, because that was our main threat. So using the football element, but also using that togetherness of, right, we're not going to give teams a minute's piece on the ball. We're going to play really intense in sort of the middle phases. We're not going to go too high and expose ourselves. But when they get to this area of the pitch, we're going to really collective hunt them down in groups, in packs. So the presentation for that, I used a lot of stuff on on players talking about what team ethics meant to them. So there was some stuff in there from Tom Brady and stuff like this. Then I did a piece on the wolf packs, like using the wolf as a piece of, like, this is one of the most fierce hunting forces in the world. And these are the reasons why they don't leave other wolves behind. They hunt in packs. They hunt together. They're fearless. They're also very intelligent. It's very planned. So some stuff around that as well. So we used a lot of the stuff. We used the wolves on that. Then I used another slide was on using Iceland as an example, who first qualified for the tournament, and this is what they achieved. Denmark back in 1988. This is what they achieved. They went on to win it when they weren't supposed to be in the tournament. So teams that I'd say were similar to us going into big tournaments, and what they achieved by being collective and together. And then again finished on a really nice video what we did on the playoffs. So, and I think that really helped us because we had a purpose then. We had a collective purpose, and we got out of a very, very tough group by beating Portugal as well, which was never on the cards.
That's a hell of a win.
Yeah.
Purpose and identity, Dave. I mean, identity but utilizing. There's several things I've written down here that I love. Metaphor, the wolf, the hunting in packs. So it's metaphor towards teamwork, hunting in packs, because it's quite a robust metaphor. You talked about explode and attack, which I would suggest are action concepts. I think the Red Bull franchise uses a lot of action concepts very, very effectively across their football teams, but explode and attack, and the utilization of Iceland and their success in the Euros years ago, as you mentioned, as I would, from a sports psychology theory perspective, lean on the work of Albert Bandura, self-efficacy, self-belief, and one of the sources being vicarious experience. If they can do it, we can do it. Look at this small nation; they're similar to us. If a person or a team or a nation is similar to yourself and has done well, that's a demonstration that it's been done before, so we can do it as well. I love that. There's so much there. There's so much rich content there in what you guys were doing. It doesn't surprise me that you had success. I mean, if I may ask this question, got to the Euros, but haven't managed to qualify for the World Cup this time. If and those qualifications have only just finished, but if you could get in a time machine and go back, is there anything that you would do differently or add from the psych perspective, or was that not so relevant this time around?
Yes, yeah. I think there would be things, but we'd do a little bit different. And I think some things were forced upon us. So we lost the core of our leadership group through players' age. So we lost. So our captain is still there, but he doesn't play as much. But we still have him around the squad. So to bring some football sort of tactical side into it, we played in a 3-5-2 shape, and our back three were very experienced players, and they were good talkers, good leaders, and our attacking players felt safe. They was like our safety net behind them, with them there, and that allowed us to do the things we did further up the pitch, which was great. So the captain is still with us, but unfortunately, our two other central defenders, through injuries and not playing so much for their clubs, and probably are not at that international level anymore. Maybe age has played a part in that as well. So we've lost probably 2 or 3 players to that was our core foundation. So we brought in some younger players to play in our defensive positions. So we knew that would maybe bring some, maybe more risk. But Georgia, not being a big nation, it's not like a club where you can transfer players. You have to play with what you've got. So the draw is only as big as it is. So we have to give young players a chance to come up. I'm under 21s, so some of our under 21s that have been playing well. So we brought them up, and through that period of changes, I think what we did do well is, another part of my role was to do one-to-ones with them as young players, to find out as much as we could. So when they come into camp, they're there on merit, on their ability. They're there because of their footballing qualities, but also to get to know them a little bit as well. So, and younger players offer, especially the younger players in Georgia, they're probably very different to maybe sort of Western Europe in terms of how they're brought up, how they think. So we knew they needed more time. We knew they needed more time to integrate of what we built. So we knew that there would, and our World Cup group was very tough as well. We had Spain and Turkey, so it was incredibly tough.
Wow.
Yeah, incredibly tough. So it's luck of the draw a little bit, sometimes help in these situations.
Of course.
Yeah. So I think that played a part. Younger elements played a part, and then from the psych side, I think, and if I'm honest, I think we lost a little bit of what we were in the Euros.
Okay.
That real togetherness and that hunt, and what made us what we were, that made us strong, and we tried to take some elements of Georgia as a country, the history. They've always been a fighting country. They've always known how to
Yes.
fight historically, and I think we lost a little bit of that. So I think, maybe we could have done more around that to try and not to bring us back to go back, but with the newer players to introduce them to that and say, look, this is what we are. This is our real identity. This is who Georgia is as a nation, and get them to maybe buy into it a little bit more, and
Yeah.
do more work around that. I think that's where we could have probably done that. And when we reviewed, debriefed after the last qualification game, and obviously we didn't qualify it, we felt that as a collective, as a coaching group, we felt that we could have done more work around that. And Willie himself said, that's part of his job as a head coach. Um, he said I probably could have, for you, Dave, we could have got you to do more of that with some of our players. He could have done more of that within the training within the group. So yeah, I think from the psych side, it was losing that little bit of identity that probably got us so strong in the first place.
Really fascinating stuff. Moving on from the coaching side, just the last sort of 5-10 minutes of the conversation here, into your roles as a sporting director, a technical director as well. Again, leaning on sports
Yeah.
psychology. What part did sports psychology, play here for you in your roles as sporting director and technical director?
Yeah, that's really interesting because, again, a different framework needed for that role.
Yeah.
Not so much where you're working with players or you're looking to recruit talent. Was more about leadership and management of departments, and having a strategic overview of the departments, and having a leadership, and try to build a long-term strategy. So, what did that look like for the club, and what did that look like for the departments, and trying to fuse that all together. Um, so Ostersund's, as you probably experienced, was quite a small club, very unique, very didn't probably have the big departments. The staff was quite small, so
Yeah.
but that it was good because it was intimate. It was very intimate. We had one analyst, we had one fitness guy, a small coaching team. So it was just me and one other recruitment guy. That was it. So I say a little bit easier to manage, but still trying to build that into the vision and the structure of the club for the own. And it was an owner's vision on that point. He was very much about second chance players and about giving people opportunities, rather than more of a right. This is how we do it. This is what we got to do. This is our budget. This is our framework. It was a little bit more relaxed. Huddersfield, it was right. You had a very strict remit. You're responsible within the first 2-3 weeks. They let go of the coach. Right now, we want you to recruit a head coach. What does that look like? Within 2-3 weeks, had to try and get up to speed with the history, with what was going on, with the identity of the club, the environment of the club. What type of coach are we going to look for? What type of coach is going to fit into here, and what type of characteristics do we want in our coach? So those were very intense conversations around that, because that the head coach would obviously filter down to how maybe the departments would work around that. And then, the medical, the recruitment, the sport science, the performance departments, the academy department, how would that all intertwine with that? So there were so many layers within the first sort of 2 months of my role that I had to get equipped to. So it was like, right, okay, so how am I gonna? Because it was a new ownership as well, and I don't think he kind of knew what he wanted at that time as well. So, which made it again another challenge, where sometimes when you go into a club, or a sporting director will go into a club, they kind of know what they're going into. They'd have to know what the history and the structure and the framework of the club. Where here, it was all over the place. It was because the ownership was right. He said, I want to play the Huddersfield way. Okay, well, what is the Huddersfield way? What does that look like? And it was right. We want to play attacking football, good football. Okay. So, but we also want to, it's a working class town, it's a working class area. So we want those elements
Hmm.
of hard work. We want people to fight and die on the pitch. We also want to attack. So basically, you want all of it. So okay, we can't have all of it. So let's get the key elements. Let's use the area piece. Let's use the hard working piece, because I think that's being from Yorkshire, being from the area. my wife's from Yorkshire as well, so I tapped into her a little bit and said, well, what, because I'm a southerner, so it was, let's understand the thinking from your side of things. So yeah, she said, look, yeah, no, those working class foundations, that's humidity piece, that that they're really key elements. They don't really like arrogant people. They don't really like, it's a real working hard city. Okay. So yeah, then managing, and then my first sort of 2-3 weeks was okay. Once the head coach was appointed, getting working with the heads of department, bringing those together. So I had individual meetings with the leadership roles with each of the head of the academy, head of recruitment, head of sports science, head of performance, and we had a really good head of performance in John Iger, who was really really good. So he gave me sort of the foundations from the performance piece and how that would look like integrating within the head coach, then looking at the analysis of what we would work with that, and then looking at the recruitment again, looking at the characteristics of what type of players. So bringing all these together um, was probably the first 6 to 9 months of my role, trying to get down, well, who are we as a club? What's our identity? How we're going to work? How we're going to work together? All the departments are different. You've all got different competencies and you've all got different skill sets and different roles. But how can we all work this together? How can we bring all this together to help primarily the first team become successful, and then ultimately the foundation of our younger players, so to get them opportunities? So how can we work all this together? So that was the first 6 to 9 months of that, which was challenging.
Yeah, from a site perspective, I'm thinking here. Obviously, we've spoken a lot about identity. That's in that role as well, creating the identity, probably the shared purpose there, and really a sense of what I'm thinking is shared language, shared set of behaviours. What do we do around here? How do we do it? And then cross departmental communication, cooperation, coordination, all of that drives those three C's essentially.
Mm.
So psychology, a constant strand, and omnipresent through everything that you're doing there, and I know it's nothing new, but I love the way that you're speaking to connecting the identity of the team, the club, the organisation to the local community, really borrowing from social identity theory in sports psychology. Who are we? What's our history here? I mean, so much good work done there, whether it's Owen Eastman at the English FA and
Yeah.
other people in this area. We've spoken a lot about social identity theory and how it can positively impact an organisation. I mean, really great stuff. But I think, the overarching feel I've had from you, Dave, when you step back into academia, and I love the way you've done that, and the sports psychology masters and your interest in sports psychology has been a constant strand through your career so far, whether that's in coaching, recruitment, or as a sporting or technical director. It's constantly there. Um, what's next for you? You're with the Georgia national team. I'm assuming you'll go again
Yeah.
with Euros. What's the dream?
Yeah, I mean, I love my role there. So yeah, we go again. We regroup. As I said, we're going to try and get back to where we were first and foremost. What made us strong. We've got a new age of players coming through. Different challenges with those. So I think that's the first and foremost, is to try and get us back to that hungriness, that togetherness, that um, yeah, the hunters feel, because I think that really brought us together, not just as a team but as a nation as well. The nation really, really felt that. So that's the first and foremost. For me personally, long-term ambitions would be to be a head coach um, at a good club, good level, with staff and players with good competencies. Um, I think that's the thing. I think I'm, over a long career, done over 20 years, and my skill set and the different roles and challenges I've had, whether it be in recruitment and coaching. I think I've got enough now to lead a team and bring those skills together and to have a really good crack at it and hopefully become very successful.
Great stuff, Dave. Well, how can people find you, follow you, and potentially get in touch?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. This is a first and foremost I use as a professional networking. I'm on. I've 2 years ago I entered the world of Instagram because I'd never been on Facebook or I've been Twitter a couple of times, but I deleted it when I was at York because I was
Too much.
For fan abuse got a bit much, but yeah. So I've come on that. So yeah, through Instagram, through LinkedIn, I can be reached on those two sort of networking sites.
Brilliant. Dave Webb, thank you so much for today.
Dan, thank you so much for having me, mate. Really appreciate it.
Well, everyone, I really enjoyed that episode, and I'd love to hear what you, the listener, thinks. So do get in touch via X or Facebook or through my website, danabrahams.com, to tell me what you think of the show. And if you do have any suggestions, I'd be delighted to hear them. I'm already looking forward to next week's episode. Bye for now.